In a world increasingly fractured by discord and division, the ability to truly understand others, not just sympathize, but empathize, is more vital than ever. And often, that empathy begins by, quote, walking in someone's shoes. What if the protagonist of this story were a Jamaican-born writer named Nomar, a man whose heritage is a latticework of histories? His grandmother was Colombian mestizo descent. His DNA reflects 10% native Indian, over 20% white British ancestry, and a striking 42% from the Royal Kingdom of Benin and various African nations. Both his maternal and paternal ancestors were Sephardic Jews, families who fled the Inquisition in the 16th and 17th centuries. They found refuge in the Caribbean, Jamaica among them. Nomar's great-great-grandfather, Alexander Suarez, was a merchant in Spanish Town, part of that exiled lineage. His maternal great-grandmother, Antoinette Mann, a registered Jewess, had first settled in Haiti before coming to Jamaica. By 1720, Jews made up 18% of Jamaica's population. This history isn't well known. It's underreported, even though the island is filled with signs of this cultural blend, Jewish-Jamaican intersections, visibly in Rastafarian thought, reggae rhythms, and religious hybridization. So perhaps the question is not where one would find someone with such a richly woven heritage, but how that heritage shaped the journey of a man who often found himself walking in the footsteps of those who came before him. Nomar's travels took him to Andalusia, Spain, a place more than just a destination. It is distilled romance and legacy. Olive groves stretch lazily under the sun. Flamenco dancers, alongside trained horses, perform rhythmic duets that ignite the senses. There he wandered to Roman ruins, visited cathedrals that were once mosques, and tasted dry aristocratic sherries like Fino and Manzanilla in places like Cadiz. But it was the ancient beauty of the Alhambra, with its Moorish arches and Islamic gardens, that history whispered louder than words. It echoed the migrations, faiths, and fusions that birthed him. Nomar, raised Catholic, found deep symbolism in, quote, walking in St. Peter's shoes. When Pope John Paul II visited Jamaica, Nomar stood at the gates. The Pope's vehicle stopped. Out stepped the pontiff, and what Nomar remembers most were those crimson-red shoes. To him, they weren't about leather or design. They embodied humility, service, and the legacy of Peter. They represented the sacred task of advocating for the poor, the forgotten, and vulnerable. But Nomar's understanding of walking in someone's shoes began far earlier. As a small boy in Jamaica, he always wore shoes and socks. His household, with a medical background, took health precautions seriously. But most of his friends came to school barefoot. One day he asked them, "What does it feel like to walk barefoot on the marl roads and dusty earth?" So he did what only a child full of innocent empathy might do. He took off his Cuban-style leather boots and socks and joined them. They walked together as one group, barefooted. The class difference vanished. That day he learnt the gap between the haves and the have-nots is sometimes as simple as shoes. But empathy has its cost. A few weeks later, he was in terrible pain. A parasitic infection, myiasis, had embedded maggots in his toe. The larva had to be removed with a long, sterile needle. That pain would mark him forever, not just physically, but morally. It made him care, truly care, for barefooted children around the world. When he later read Hansel and Gretel, or the rhyme about the old woman who lived in a shoe, it wasn't just fiction. He thought of real children, starving, shoeless, abandoned, facing famine, while nations with surpluses held back aid out of political indifference. Even Andalusia, so romantic today, once suffered terribly during Europe's great famines. Leather shoes were luxuries then. Footwear became a class marker, a symbol of survival. And so we return to the idea. To walk in someone's shoes sometimes means to take off your own. Sometimes it leaves a scar. Sometimes it teaches you who you are. In closing, let us remember the barefooted, those in Gaza, in Haiti, in forgotten refugee camps, or on our TV screens. Because shoes don't just protect our feet, they tell our stories. And when this journey ends, may the poor children of the world, too long left behind, be ready. Zapatos para bailar en el cielo. Thank God for shoes to dance in heaven. As the old song goes, when I get to heaven, I'm going to put on my shoes and walk all over God's heaven.